Are you ready to tap into the power of feminine and masculine energy? Sandy Sembler, founder of the Sacred She, joined me today to share her insights on healing past traumas, embracing your authentic self, and the joy of living an aligned life when you can find harmony with those masculine and feminine energies within each of us. Throughout the episode, Sandy shares practical tips and inspirational stories that I found so effective. I'm adding one of those tips into my daily routine starting today. So stick with us and discover how you can embrace your true potential in this episode of the Invisible to Invincible podcast. I'm Kendra Losee. Let's get started. Welcome, Sandy. I'm excited you're here today.
I am too. Thank you for having me. So fun.
One of the things that really, like, you do a lot of work that I think is very unique. So, in your words versus mine, because you're going to be able to explain it a lot better than I can you please let everyone know what it is that you do?
Yeah, I love that. Well, SakredShe is my company, and SakredShe is an internationally known women's organization. And the sense of we're a community that really teaches to allow yourself to feel what you feel. Feel what you feel in order for you to actually show up brighter and better in the world. Sacred She was born from a healing journey where I was basically gobsmacked about 11 years ago when I had an intervention with Tony Robbins and really was shown that I was operating more out of my masculine than my feminine. And that was
Mhm.
coming from a place of more of trauma from a hard childhood and having to work at 12. It wasn't like I was a budding entrepreneur, wanted to be one. It was like out of design. And I'm so grateful for it because I have such a great work ethic. But what I do is I really help women alchemize, their experiences and turning their pain to purpose, showing up unapologetically for who they are and learning how to rewild themselves, going back down to that little girl that lives within. Some people like to call her the inner child. I actually think it's like my little girl, and she has a name, and her name's Simone. And how can we actually bring back more joy and fire and funky and sometimes a fight where maybe we have shushed her. And I think it's super important. And honestly, if you would have told me maybe 12 years ago, this is what I would be, my purpose out in the world. I always knew that my life was going to be my dharma, and this is earth school, I always like to say. But if you would have told me it was this, I would have told you were crazy. But I really have seen, after working with so many women, even before Sacred She and business and teaching women how to launch their businesses, a lot of women out there, my friend, that they were happy, but they weren't unabashedly joyful for no reason. Their light had really been dimmed, and they were attempting to keep up with the hustle culture. And that culture is really one that it doesn't serve our health, it doesn't serve our
Mhm.
wealth, it doesn't serve our
Mhm.
partners. It's really, if we're going to pass something down, is that really what we want to pass down? Is how much we did that day. And I don't just mean the amount of money you made, but all the things. So I call it Google mapping in our community. Google map your life, and how are you showing up, and is it really helping you get to where you want to go at the end of your lifetime? If you live your life in hindsight, how do you want to be known? How do you want to be thought of, and what legacy do you want to leave? And for me,
Mhm.
I hope it is that I actually added smiles to a lot of people's faces. And my mantra is I'm a beacon of light for a creator, for God, and I share God's love in a fun and funky way. And I can promise you that is what I do, and it shows up in a lot of different ways. Like we were saying earlier, what's good for Sandy is good for the world. And I don't mean that in a hedonistic way. What I mean is when we're connected, I teach my women to live in a connected space, knowing who they are, finding out their core desires, and then show up for life like that. Show up for like as her, and the
Mhm.
world will show up for you. It sounds so
Mhm.
cliche, but it really is true. It really, really is true. I've seen it time and time and time again.
I have so many things I want to unpack in what you just
Okay.
said. I'm like trying to remember them all. I'm like, okay, okay, okay. So first of all, for people listening, can you define, I'm going to take us to the basics for a second.
Sure.
Can you define the difference between masculine and feminine energy? I just want to make sure we're starting at the same place.
100%. And it's not, and it's not gender specific when you're talking about the way I'm teaching it. It really is more the masculine and feminine, alpha, omega, that lives inside of all of us, the yin and
Mhm.
yang. But
Mhm.
I'll use masculine and feminine because that's the way I teach it. So again, that's
Yeah.
where we'll go. But again, the masculine is your go mode. The masculine is your boundaries. The masculine is getting it done. It's that part of us that walks in integrity, right? That's that. And then our feminine is our artfulness. The feminine is the life giver. The feminine is the creativity. The feminine is emotional intelligence. It's actually the creative side of us. And
Mhm.
I share often that, if we had more men in the world actually with a more healthy feminine energy, then they would be leading more with their intuition. They would be collaborating more. There would be maybe less competition per se, and they would maybe be more heart centered, right? Where women now, I find, even to this day, going shoulder to shoulder with a man means they have to actually like not love men. And the truth is that if we can show up with our superpower, which is our feminine intuition, which is that part of us, then that is the part of us that's able to receive, because the feminine is the art of receivership. Money is receiving. So the more people can heal their feminine, the more successful I find that they can be. So again, it is that life giver that we are in the feminine. And I find that more women who are attracted to my work generally are showing up more in their masculine, where they've dimmed their light, either because they thought they needed to for their relationships that they're in, their life that they're in, the lot they were handed down, they think, versus a woman who shows up super feminine. I generally find that that's the woman who's attracted to me, someone who's, whether they're 19 or 82. I've worked with all ages in between. We all have that part of us that is looking to be seen, heard, understood, and feel safe, and that masculine part of us is looking to be revered and respected. So when I'm working with partnership, I'll just share this. I mean, there's always somebody who's more feminine, someone who's more
Mhm.
masculine, and it works with same-sex relationships too. When you find that you're both showing up as both, as you show up
Mhm.
both as feminine, your relationship will be depolarized. Same thing masculine. So there's little tricks and embodiment practices we can do in the moment to create some polarity, some sacred theater, so you can alchemize those emotions. So that was a long answer to your question, but I want to make sure we go outside of the realm of just masculine and feminine, because it's actually quite complex. It's
Mhm.
simple, but it's not easy. You know what I mean? It's simple,
Yeah.
but it's not easy, and it's weaponized so much out there in the world. And I really teach it differently, where we don't have to go to Sedona. I always say, and dance in a goddess circle to really be more feminine. The divine lives in all of us. We don't have to go be more feminine or be more masculine. We are. We just are. We be those already. Like we be those, right? That's who we are. And I like to teach that those softening practices for those who are, primarily more feminine at their core. You can walk through a door frame and have it be a practice. Every time you walk through a door frame, can you do a little body check? And can you soften your jaw? Can you swivel your hips? Can you just pay attention, that are you in your body? Go through your five senses, and then sit back down at your desk, and you'll notice that you'll be more productive, because you're going to feel more alive. There's more chi, more energy running through your body. Now, if you're always running the energy through your body, you probably won't get a darn thing done. So we got to make sure we got a healthy masculine as well. And I know for myself, when I first started doing this work, I really had to rein it back in, because I was having so much fun out there in the world and really enjoying myself. And
Mhm.
well, wait a minute. And that's why I bring in something called the masculine cleanse, which I've learned from beautiful teachers and with Kendra through the years, where you heal your own relationship with the masculine. And I don't mean, and so when I say masculine cleanse, people think like not having sex, for example. I mean, like
Right. Yeah.
healing the masculine from within and noticing, where do you need to tidy up things? Where do you need
Mm.
to tend to your garden? Yeah, that's a little bit about how we get dropped into this work.
So interesting. And I still like, for me, I was one of those people that was always like executive at at the places I was working, and rose up and stayed up, as far as executive level, that kind of thing, and it wasn't important to me. So
Yes.
when I got laid off twice, I started my own business, but then I found myself with a whole other thing, right? Because all of a sudden I was and all the hustle culture and everything was bombarding me,
Yeah.
and, like, on the other hand was, like, girl boss, which I have
No.
very strong feelings about that,
Same.
but it was very much everywhere, and so it wasn't until I first heard about even feminine energy, which is crazy because 'cause I'm in California, like, it had just never come into my purview.
Right.
Once I started trying to figure out, like, this hustle culture is not working for me, I'm struggling with my business because 'cause I'm trying to figure out who I wanna be, what I wanna do, all of those things, and
Sure.
then and I know what I'm really good at, so it was
Right.
like, how do I fit my skills into those things? in a way that felt good. And it was the in a way that felt good
Yes.
that
Yeah.
had me driving. And, I very distinctly remember, I was like, I don't know what this is, but I'm going to sign up to learn about it. And as soon as I was like, okay, it's a little too woo out there for me.
Yeah.
But then once I got past that like judgment piece, I don't know it. So therefore it's not right. How is this going to help me? It was very surprising to me how when I learned to change just some of the things that I did and how I approached things, what felt better.
100%. I mean, it really is when we can envision ourselves already there. And that's the gift of the feminine too. I mean, we see, let's face it, have you ever seen an ugly baby? Probably. But is your baby ugly? Never. You know what I mean? Like, anyway,
Yeah.
we have the vision to be able to see. And that's also why, we can get in trouble in relationships more often than men, where we see potential and fall in love with potential. That's a whole nother conversation, right?
Yeah,
But
that's
hey, how you do anything is how you do everything. So if we can have like, oh, I could spit shine that business and make it work. Well, are you really supposed to? Is it in
right.
alignment with who you are? Just like we talk about in partnership. So again, it really does. They really do overlap quite a bit. I honor you too for being able to tap into what's pleasurable to you. And when I talk about pleasure, so many people think I'm talking about sex, and I am sometimes. And also it's like, but what feels good to the senses? I feel
Mhm.
into before I say yes to, I'll just say even like talking to you, like when it was reaching out to even inquire, is this a yes? Does it feel good? I'll tap into, even it sounds silly, but even my little girl like Simone, like, what do you think about this? And because I've learned to have this different relationship with her because I didn't have one for so long, right? Because
Right.
she's the one that actually, needs the protection, needs the love, wants to go play. And I really honor you for that, that you really, first off, took the chance to just change it all up, and you pivoted well, because that's not an easy task. And that actually is a good sense of adventure from the feminine, right? And the masculine to go, I've got you, boo. We can do this. Right. Right.
I like chatting.
Exactly.
No,
All the personalities going on, all the conversations.
yeah, exactly. So you mentioned that before you were helping business owners and like talk to me a little bit about that pivot point. Like
Yeah.
you mentioned an intervention, you mentioned what were you doing before?
Yeah. So I moved to Florida, and when I was young, in my young 20s, I was with a mortgage company, and then I left that company and started my own. So I was in banking and finance, believe it or not. But it was, which again, that surprises me. But how that happened, I was literally coming home from a trip. I lived in Charlotte, and I sat between these two men, these two guys, and we started chatting, and they were talking to me about real estate. And I'm like, that sounds interesting. And I was like, I'll go get my real estate. I was like, whatever. I mean, I
Tell
was
me
like
more.
young and didn't know any better. Let's take a chance. Let's go. And so I ended up getting my real estate license and ended up working in a mortgage company, started investing in homes and mobile home parks and things like that. But ended up here in the Tampa Bay, and worked for a bank, and then launched my own mortgage company. And then from there, that's when I went through a breakup, and I started working with Stella and Dot, and which is a jewelry company. And I,
Mhm.
was helping a lot of different women launch their businesses, and so around the world. And it was fascinating because women from all ages. So went from there, that type of team building, entrepreneurship building, to then, what I'm doing now, because I was already coaching in the business realm. And then when
Mhm.
I had that intervention with Tony, I was like, I need to bring this into my business. And then SakredShe was, born a few years later, about, I guess, 5 years later. SakredShe was born in the middle of the night, woke up and was like, I need to actually make this a full-time gig. And I moved away from that company and launched another company. So I'm always growing, always pivoting, but I know this is here to stay. We have a big goal to touch 12 million lives, directly and indirectly, through the children, through the grandparents, through the smile you give, your neighbor, how you walk down the street, right? I mean, there's all kind of ways we touch people. And I literally could just talk about this work all day. It doesn't feel like I'm working when I'm sharing and I'm teaching. In fact, I have an interesting way. Let's talk about self-care. A lot of
Yeah.
people think self-care is like hopping in your cold plunge and, I don't know, running 10 miles or whatever, cleaning their closet makes them feel good. Like, no to me. Like none of that feels good to me. When I think about getting in my cold plunge, I like cringe, because it doesn't, self-care to me, when I teach it, I teach self-care needs to feel good when you actually think about it. So when
Mhm.
I think about playing with my dogs or going out in my garden and cutting
Yeah.
greenery for my house, or I mean, sitting here with you, like this is I'm loving on myself, right?
Yeah.
And that's such a different way to think about self-care because it's really overused, in my opinion, the way it's used. It 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 doesn't have to always look so luxurious the way we talked about, right? It has to look so luxurious and pampery. It can really just be the way I'm being in that moment and I'm just enjoying it for what it is.
I always think of people, like, in the bathtub with
Exactly.
bubbles and candles and all that stuff, and I'm like, "That sounds torturous to me." I'm 6 feet tall. Like, I don't fit in a bathtub.
All
That
gangly.
is right. It's like either the bottom half of me is in and my legs are up the wall, or the bottom half there's nothing luxurious about, like, that's kind of my nightmare,
Oh,
it's
I
like,
love
"Oh,
you are
go
so
relax in the
yeah.
bath." Like, no, I'm not gonna do that, but if I can go take my dogs to the beach, my
Yes.
dog, I only have 1, but he feels like more sometimes.
Yeah.
If I can go take my dog to the beach, if I can take him for a walk and just be
Yes.
out at one of my favorite locations, like, that to me is going to do it. So it's just so funny
I'm
how,
with
like,
you, sister. I'm
everyone
with
has
you.
their own opinion and their own thing that they love to do, and
It is
that's
true. I think about like, if you look at the Insta famous people, they've got their bubbles, their bubble bath, and their champagne, and I'm like, "Nope, just get me in the grass and the beach." And I love watching my dogs play. I love
mhm,
listening to I've learned, and I've learned that you can find joy in the eyes of a child. That
yeah,
you can find joy in anything. I mean, you can it is, but we have to train ourselves for that. We have to literally make
mhm.
it a practice too. So I'm with you. High five. When I think about taking a luxurious bath, it feels like work to me to get it just doesn't feel good to me. Now, if somebody draws a bath for me and all of that, and then they lead me to the bathtub, maybe, but it still doesn't feel like self-care. It doesn't go on my list
I'm
at all.
still gonna say no to that. Unless it's longer.
They do make those, so just saying.
They do, not in my condo, but they do, and it's still like, that's never gonna be my number 1,
Yeah, sure. And it doesn't
you
have to.
know?
Isn't that good? Isn't that great? It doesn't have to be. And that's
Yep,
what's so wonderful to be able to, and honestly, to be able to, I have a whole practice and a meditation around how to actually find the things that feel good to you. And a lot of times it's going to come when you discover your core desire. Like, what
mhm,
is your sacred relationship vision that you want for yourself? Like the relationship
mhm,
you want with me, myself, and I, and then the kind of partner that you're going to call in if you're single, and also the kind of partner that you can evoke from the one that you have. You don't have to toss out the one you have necessarily to actually have that new relationship. Sometimes it's necessary, let's face it. But, there's so many ways to shake up that snow globe of life and then let yourself be in the excitement of what it is. And I think it comes down to, what do you want to experience that day?
mhm.
Like, how do you want to be experienced? And how are you going to experience life? And, again, it's living more in with the verb, of this place of like experiencing, but understand that you can actually be that already. Again, something that I wasn't raised that way. Are you kidding me? No way. And then this is all learned. Like I've created
Mhm.
Sandy. This Sandy that you're talking to now is not the Sandy you would have talked to. I mean, heck, he probably even 3 years ago, even a year ago. I mean, 6 months ago. That power of the pivot is real. And for me to be able to dance with that is super important. Otherwise, I get all stuck in certainty and survival. And the world is not better when Sandy's in survival and certainty. That's for sure.
So, talk to us, can you share some of your pivot? Because you mentioned several pivots and you've pivoted along the way. When you pivot, do you pivot with certainty? Is there a feeling of risk and
Mm,
fear? I know that there's a lot of people that fear change,
yes.
right? Or
Right.
that are at this point, and I truly believe there's so many women and so many people, men as well, that are at this point where they're just trying to figure, they're asking themselves, is this all? Is this it? And there's a
100%.
lot of overwhelm and anxiety and self-doubt, imposter syndrome, like all of these words to describe
Yeah.
that feeling. How do you balance some of those typical feelings that people have
Got it.
or
Yeah.
how do you manage them, or how do you work with them as you're looking at your future and as you're looking at pivoting to go where it feels right and where your core values are taking you?
That's such a great question. It's really it's monumental this time of year. Because the first day of spring is coming up. It's also the first day of
Mhm.
spring is my birthday. So it's like, and that it literally is truly supposed to be like New Year's for all of us. And so I just I'll make it my New Year's. Yeah, it's interesting too. Is so I think we mentioned this before we hit record. I mean, if I am feeling frustrated, I know something's out of alignment. Like I really know that. And now that I know that at my ripe old age of 52, I can say that with a lot of wisdom that came with a lot of manifesting my life versus manifesting my life. And you know what I mean? Like I'm the kind of person that can make anything happen. And I've realized that I don't necessarily need to, and nor do I want to, quite frankly. I don't need to prove anything to anyone. And that comes with just a lot of wisdom. I used to hustle it through and make it happen. Like I said, now I really like to live my life in hindsight. I learned this from a mentor a few years back, and it really spoke to me before I turned 50. It was, if you live your life in hindsight and you know you're going to ask these questions at the end of the year, you're going to look at all your pictures at the end of the year and you're going to do a collage, like you do your vision board in reverse hindsight. How do you want to look back at your year? How do you want to actually, how do you ask yourself, how did you live? How did you matter? How did you serve? How did you love? I think for me, just asking those questions every night and journaling those helps me know that I'm going to ask those questions and show up differently. I will say this though, because I work a lot with women with trauma, and not just the trauma with a capital T, but even how Tony pointed out to me years ago that my work ethic came from trauma, came from daddy leaving me when I was 12, me having a single, as my mom being a single mom suddenly, me being a single mom suddenly is when all that came to be years ago. We can't deny what this brain's doing. This computer is making us safe, not happy. If I'm feeling like I'm leaning more into certainty and I'm trying to control, anytime that the feminine is controlling, criticizing, or closing off her energy, it's because she doesn't feel seen, heard, understood, or feel safe. The
Mhm.
first thing is to have the awareness of what is your baseline, what's homeostasis for you. Like I know for me what my homeostasis is, and I know I have people around me that also know what that is. They know that's my higher self. They know, and if I'm out of alignment, I give them full permission to call me out on that in love,
Mhm.
to just recognize that if you're starting to control the outcome, it's probably because, and it's a fine line, it's probably because there's something that's not, that you're feeling unsafe somewhere. And it doesn't
Mhm.
mean you're getting ready to get raped and pillaged, and it's not, it's just primal. Something's going on this allowing you to feel um unseen, unheard. And so making sure that you've healed whatever it is that's holding you back from speaking up, from
Mhm.
being boundaried. The other thing is that I'll share this as well, because what's happening in my world, and the world's going to witness me and a lot of pivots. I believe in the next 3 to 5 years is the last 5% of healing comes in partnership. And so, as my husband and I have been in the midst of that, I mean, we practice what we teach. It has been fascinating to see what's come up for us, and then we're
Mhm.
seekers. We believe that we're here to learn from each other in sacred union. So we're going to learn and then bring it to the world. I bring everything, my dharma is to bring it to the world. So again, for me, it's a matter of, it's definitely not from certainty that I want to change, but it is having a vision of how I want to live my life at the end of my years. And I've had an interesting spell of a lot of younger people, even around my age, that have passed away suddenly. And it really has like made me put some things in perspective. And stress is a killer. And I really want to tell your audience too, your body is telling you something. And
Mhm.
I had a reel go like really viral, like 15 million people saw it. It's like a silly video of my little corgi looking up at me, and I'm taking my hair tie out, and it's like it's talking about what your body's not telling you. Your body already knows when something's out of alignment. It's a matter of, are we slowing down enough to pay attention to it? And I know for many, many women I work with, including myself at times, I don't necessarily, my subconscious mind doesn't want to see what I need to see in order to make the pivot.
No, I totally get it, and it's funny you say that because I talk a lot about my own journey in the last couple of years because I was hustling so hard. Like, I figured out the feminine energy a little bit, but then I liked what you said. It wasn't manifest, it was manifesting. Like, I
And that's
just was
yeah,
like,
yeah,
"I'm gonna make this happen. This is what I think needs to be."
sure.
And that combined with, like, I wasn't putting myself first. And
Yeah.
so my health was very declined, and it was very much like I had to go to specialists and figure out what was going on and alternative doctors because medical, like, I'm not even gonna get into
Yeah.
Western medicine. But I ended up getting certified in NLP, and I originally went for
Yes.
myself, and then I went back and kept studying and got my master prac certification because it was so important, like, it helped me so much
Yes.
that I went back for more training so that way I could work with more people
Sure.
because it's just such a powerful thing to help release some of those things that are holding you back to help change and make those things a priority. So when you look at the life you want to create, like you said, however you're going to do it, and I absolutely love that idea of hindsight.
Isn't that great? It
Yeah.
changed my world. I was like,
Oh yeah, as soon as you said that, I was like, wait, what?
what? I know. So I did the same thing. I mean, it really, because it was, I mean, I started thinking about, like I said, last year was a tough year within our family, and I love taking pictures. And I'm like,
Mhm.
wow. In some ways, I practiced what I preached up to a certain point, but you can tell it was an off year because there was a lot of sadness within, and I'm grateful for it now because I understand where it came from, and I've healed those pieces, and we've healed those pieces in the family stuff. It's all
Yeah.
there, but it wasn't pretty, and I also think that there's to be able to feel joy, right? We have to be able to feel sorrow. There's actually
Mhm.
a beautiful, beautiful beautiful gifts and knowing that you can feel the sorrow and you're not going to fall apart, you're not going to die on the other side of that. Yeah, I will tell you though, again, adrenal fatigue and all the things, for us, especially as women, and because we weren't made, I don't care what anybody says, we weren't made to go 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 like that as women. We weren't. Now maybe every iteration of generations that go and the brain change and the bodies are changing because of just for genetics, maybe that's changing, but I know at least me, born in 1971, that's not the case. I'm not supposed to be burning the candle at both ends. I'm supposed to, I don't even believe in balance, sister. I don't believe in balance. I think it's more of a harmonization because
Yeah.
balance actually is too much certainty in that. I'd rather actually be able to, you know what I mean? Like not live on my feelings because that doesn't work, but to
Yeah.
be able to know how to bring in and understand, again, just go back to the five senses if you need to. Like, what am I experiencing right now? What am I feeling? It's very orienting to be able
Mhm.
to do that.
I think that it's, and also balance is different for everybody, right? Some
Sure.
people think like, "Oh, I wanna work 20 hours." Well, because that's half. So you
Right.
took a 40-hour work week,
Yes,
which no one
exactly, girl.
really works anyway, right? And you cut it in half, so now you've got this goal of 20 hours a week because it's gonna create balance. That's not gonna be the same for everybody.
Yes, that's
The
why it's
amount of money you want to make, the amount of time you want free is not gonna be the same for everybody, and that's, like, the external things. That's not the internal balance that you were talking
of
about as
course.
well.
Of course. Yeah, and I think it's a matter of learning to do the work on understanding. I love Byron Katie's work and I teach it within my groups. I mean, asking yourself those four questions when I mean, there's such a gift in being offended. There's such a gift in judging somebody, even though we were taught Southern Baptist me raised that way, like you're not supposed to judge, but we all judge. We're all
Everybody judges.
yeah. So you ask those questions. Is it true? Is it really true? How do I show up believing that thought? And what if I didn't? The kicker is that you turn it around and then you realize the person that you're judging the most is the person in the mirror. And that's really what it is. And, one of the things I've learned the last few years, if like, anyone out there doing their relationship vision is, to me, nothing sexier than a partner who has self awareness, who has emotional intelligence, like a really
Mhm.
high IQ, someone who can call their own foul, someone who will get in the mud with me and, not defensive and not adverse to constructive criticism because like I said, I crave to be around people that when they see that I'm out of alignment, that they will love me up. Like love me up. I wrote a whole course, on called Sacred Respect, which is how to teach the feminine how to heal their own masculine, but also how to actually learn to love the masculine in themselves, but also in others, and how to artfully bring out and evoke for the masculine to step up and step into their power within all of us. And
Mhm.
I realized how much I had such a disdain until I healed all those pieces for men that were passive because of my background, and also women that were super feminine, like women back then that were super feminine. I saw them as flighty. They were actually they were in their feminine, just able to go with the flow and the light, just the light, basically, where I like to pride myself that that's who I am now. I drop me in a room and I just absorb the room in a healthy way and pay attention to my surroundings in ways that I never did before. But I didn't have a healthy relationship even with my own feminine. I was raised to not really dig men. And quite frankly, I didn't really dig women either, which is a lonely place to be. I didn't even know how
Yeah.
lonely I was. You know what I mean?
Yep.
I was in total judgment and didn't even know it. So now when I appreciate women, and I think that. But by the way, I'm going to show you something. I found this out the other day by accident. Watch this.
Yeah.
You know this? I
Yep.
didn't know this. You know these things? I didn't know that.
Yeah, if you're listening, we're playing with the iPhone,
I had
or the
no
Apple
idea.
camera.
The,
I
the,
thought
the,
I turned it off. Yeah, the other one is this one. I thought I turned it off on my camera, but if you do this, lasers come out.
oh my gosh, you've got to be kidding me.
I thought I turned it off on my camera, but apparently when I did an upgrade, it
That,
came out. So we've
yeah,
got the lasers, we've got the
yeah,
heart, the
it's a whole
balloon.
party over here.
There's one more, and I'm trying to remember. Oh, this one. The peace sign is something else. No, that's the balloons, and then the okay. All right, yeah, there's like 4 or 5, like the thumbs
I
up.
literally was like having a very serious talk with
I
someone
know.
about
Yep.
trauma, and I'm just like, whatever I'm doing, all of a sudden hearts come pouring out like ET. I went, that was perfect. Thank
That's
you.
fair. That's
Yeah.
fair. I am a little annoyed because I took it off so it wouldn't be on the podcast, but,
Why not?
that's all
Hey,
good.
listen, look, see what happens when you get around me. It's all play. It's all
It's
play. It's
all
all
good.
play.
I know, and as you say that, it's been interesting because as I've been looking at, pivoting a little bit more and pushing my pivot to farther along in terms of what I do with marketing, coaching, and overall strategy for business and helping people show up, right? Because they have some of that trauma and they have some of those pieces that are holding them back, whether it's confidence or doubt or fear or whatever those things are. I've noticed that I'm being pulled more towards joy in my business,
Yeah.
which
Good.
is something that, like, I grew up with. My parents had their own business and it was always hard work, right? It was that Protestant, like, hard work. There's not a lot, you don't enjoy it, it's work.
Right.
And you have to work hard every single day, all day. And it wasn't until I went through the first round of NLP that I was like, I don't. So I'd already
Right.
had my business for several years. I was killing myself at my last jobs. I was starting to kill myself health-wise at this one by my own business, by my own hand, by not putting
Right.
myself first to pay attention to the health challenges I was facing. And now it's like such a flip in terms of how I feel about it, how I approach it, and being able to, like, why do I do this if I don't wanna be filled with joy?
Yes.
So, what do I need to do? Which is part of why I started this podcast, honestly. I love meeting people. Like, one of my values is curiosity. Like, who can I learn from? Who can I meet? Who can I help show up and share with other people because I think they're
Beautiful.
awesome and worth the time.
Yeah, I love that. I think that, and that's you honestly giving your gift because you have such a beautiful way of showing up. I can feel you. It feels like I'm sitting in your living room. We're just chatting. To your point, like you knew it was best. Yeah, I love that, and I'm looking forward to witnessing you as you have your pivots and then bringing more of your heart. Again, for me, it's like I do see like a lot of the women who come and work with me. They do pivot because they realize that they're not really living in alignment to who they are, and they
Mhm.
can actually bring in more of the positivity and more of the not false positive, but the realness, the vulnerability,
Right.
the sorrow, the rage, the sacred rage, and bringing their heart in. So there's so many aspects of sacred she and the way I like to teach, and it's never every. I mean, every woman has their own flavor for sure, but I do teach. There's 10 women that live inside of each woman, and that's super fun to help women get to know each of those because they're definitely there. That's a whole nother conversation we can have at another time.
For sure, for sure. So, as we're wrapping up, you've given a lot of tips, like I said. I am absolutely using that hindsight, your year in hindsight, because that's just so brilliant. What other tips, last thoughts do you have for somebody who's listening and are at that feeling of overwhelm or at that trying to decide if the pivot's going to be worth the risk. And honestly, there's a lot of women and men as well who are just overwhelmed with kids and aging parents and jobs that aren't satisfying and like just things like when I talk to some people, I can just feel the weight and heaviness of that conversation.
I think, gosh, it's such a great question with so many ways where we can go with it. And there's not just one answer, right?
Right.
It's not just a cookie cutter answer. I think at first to tap into how do you want to in the end of your life, like how do you if you really knew you have 30 days to live, like what would you be doing? And you knew that you still had to make money.
Mhm.
But would it look the way it is now? Would you downsize? Would you get rid of some of the things? What would you do? So many of us say we have to do something, which trains the brain. We have to. I use this right that I learned. I don't even know where I learned it, but was that's part of us that when we say something is absolute, we convince the brain that it's true, and our
Mhm.
subconscious mind believes it. So I always like to say until now. Well, I need to work 70 hours until now because it convinces
Yep.
the brain there are other possibilities. So I think too that first off, don't pretend like you're not burned out. Don't pretend like you're not stressed out with your kids. The first is like we in the field energetically, we call it the triad of change. So there's the first to be aware, and then there's the
Mhm.
acknowledgement, and
Mhm.
then there's the acceptance. And then just that alone allows energetically for things to start moving and to have the awareness that I'm not happy. How many people aren't awake to even know that
Right.
they don't know? They don't know what they don't know. But when you
Right.
know, then you know that you know that you know that, and you never stop knowing. And it's like this domino effect. It's like being in a dressing room, you look in the mirrors and you see yourself for miles and miles. Like you can't unknow what you know. And it sometimes sucks, but accept it that it sucks, but also accept it, like live in the duality of I get to do this, I get to change my life, and I also get to not. And the
Right.
key, I think, is that not living in the victimhood and recognizing, being aware. If are you the villain in your story, the hero, or where are you in your story? And for me, I like to look at all facets of how I'm showing up. And it's not pretty. It's not always pretty. I thought I was going to be in a much different space at 52 years old. I thought I was going to have tons of kids, and I have my one child and I have my stepchildren. I love them all, but I have a dream to adopt, and I have always have wanted to adopt. And I still, and I, for a while, there was like, well, I'm not going to, but why? Just because I'm over 50? I mean, why? Like, why? But I
Mhm.
got stuck with that little, bitch in my head that was telling me all the things, but that's just my ego mind. So I think
Yep.
it really comes down to it's the same thing, isn't it? I know you tell your clients this too, as us to get really clear with who we are and what we're doing. We cannot just positive think our way to the top. It's got to get dirty. You've got to get in the muck. The first thing I talk about with my clients is they get to know the feelings underneath. The feelings underneath that they're too afraid to feel. You get to dance with those, my friend. I mean, you know that you're going to come out the other side. It's going to be dirty. It's going to be messy. You're welcome, right? Like you're welcome.
It's true.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's true. And especially and I'm just gonna say this before as we're wrapping up is, like, especially being part of Gen X where they're like, "You don't feel feelings. There's no feelings." Like,
Yeah, I like,
and
but
that
that's
whole
yeah, the
thing, like
universal bird to that, like, no, that got me in trouble to not feel
right.
my feelings, right?
I think it got all of us in trouble if you've chosen
Right.
to look to step outside and look at it.
It takes bravery now, especially with what's being presented out there in the world, and I'm not just talking about gender neutral, gender fluid, what have you, but the feminine in all of us is the feeler, and I think there's also we can go the other side, we're feeling everything, and there's no masculine container. We need
Right.
to be able
Yeah.
to. I think I'd much rather live like this with knowing that I'm feeling more pain in my life now because I've allowed myself to, right?
Mhm.
I'm also feeling more joy and exuberance and experience more abundance on the other side, even though life doesn't necessarily look the way I thought it was going to at this
Right.
stage, because that was very detailed with what I desire. But I also know that it's okay that it doesn't work out exactly as it is. And I'm telling you this now a month and a half ago, I was like bawling and squalling and really not my own little sacred temper tantrum. And that's okay too, right? I mean,
Yep.
they all live within us. So I think that full range is super important. And this is for men too. This is not just for us.
Yeah.
It is
Yeah.
so important to honor the little versions of us who actually they have no fear until they do. Yeah.
It's true. Thank you. That was very beautifully said. I really want to thank you for joining us today, Sandy. For those of you listening, all of her links and how you can reach her will be available in all of the places. And for those of you joining us today, there's so many tips that she and insights that she shared. So it's fantastic. And I hope you are taking notes because some of these ideas I'm actually gonna like
I love it.
go
I love it.
go
I love
journal about
I
later.
love it. Me
Just
too. I can't wait to hear. Yeah. And make
just
sure
as
that
a
what's that?
sorry. I was
I
just
was
gonna say just as like the curiosity in me, right? Like I love to try looking at things from different angles. That's part of how I think is
You're
like, okay,
super
if you've all
feminine. That's such a feminine quality. It's so beautiful. Don't ever lose curiosity is what we need. I want more men. I want more of our partners to be more curious about us, especially we talked about human design. I mean, yeah, that Manny Gen generate. We want what be curious about us. Give us something to respond to. Yeah, be curious and make sure, by the way, for your listeners that you do that my free quiz, sandysembler.com/quiz, and it takes you down this cool portal. There's all kind of free resources there, and I love to chat with folks. But that just takes you down the space where you can like really do some deeper research. But that part about being curious, you are so magnetic and youthful, and the way that you show up for the world. Yep, there it is. How you show up for the world. That you don't need to lose that. I mean, that is like you don't need to lose that. And if you ever have
oh.
anybody say that, like I'm like gonna mama bear, like no, 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 yeah,
No,
don't squash
that
that.
sorry, I didn't mean to talk over
No, I
you.
said, no, no, squash that. Don't squash that for sure.
Yeah, sometimes the amount of questions that I tend to ask because I try to understand it from all angles drives people crazy, I will say that, and fair enough. But the natural curiosity I just absolutely love. And so I really want to thank you for
Yeah,
sharing your insights, your experience, your ideas, and just this whole different take on how we use our energy as women, how we use our energy as business owners, and just as
yeah,
people moving through the world,
yeah.
right? Where
Really,
how
you're
we
welcome.
can live better by finding that balance. So, thank you for joining us today. And if you're listening, you can find all the resources and links both below as well as on my website, kendralosee.com, because I want you to be successful both in business and life because it's never too late to make your business, your career, and your life work for you and not the other way around.
Amen. That is so true. I love
All
it.
right.
It sounds good to me. Thanks for having me. What a fun time I've had.
Thank you.